twists, you guys. It seems like every single book that I read this month, with, I guess, perhaps some exceptions, has some sort of twist in it. Whether it was a complete surprise or something that I managed to see coming at a certain point, some of which I have physical evidence for in one of my books. Yeah, twists abound. I won't say which, but one of the books that I read this month had a series of twists, one right after the other, and boy, that particular book was quite the ride. Also, one of the books had a less well executed twist. There weren't really very many hints sprinkled throughout the book, although there was one point towards the end where I read something and it just seemed off to me. Made me feel a little bit uneasy, but it didn't really hint at anything further than that. And then the twist at the end, I looked back on that spot and I was like, oh, okay, I see what happened there. I enjoyed most, if not all, of the books that I read this month. But anyway, I will just go ahead and do a quick rundown of all the books that I read this month. And hey, congratulations to me. I only renewed my books once, and I read all 5 of them before the month was over, so I'm very pleased. The first book that I read this month, which was actually, I think I finished it at the very beginning of the month, maybe, if I'm remembering correctly, I read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And my mind has completely changed since I was 16. When I was 16, I absolutely hated Jane Eyre. I couldn't stand her as a character. But first chapter in, this time around, I understood her almost completely. I adore the character now. Yeah, I found myself just rooting for her the entire time and understanding most of the decisions she made and her mentality. And that's just good for me. Plus, it was a nice, slow book, not in a boring way, but in kind of a meditative way. There's a lot of descriptions of the countryside, and those moments just felt like moments of reflection, and it was so peaceful to read. Even though I knew what the twist in that book was already, having read it, it still felt fresh to me. But at the same time, I was able to pick up on all these different things sprinkled throughout the beginning that I might not have noticed my first run through for whatever reason. Anyway, so that's the first one. And then I think I have these in order. I needed a break from more literary stuff. So the next book I read was The Cemetery Boys by Heather Brewer. I mentioned during my library haul, because this is a library book, I mentioned during my library haul that I hadn't heard of this book. And when I read the inside flap, at first it sounds like just your typical YA type book. And then it got a little darker, and so I was very interested. But reading this book, I almost stopped towards the beginning because I could not stand the main character. And he was this stereotypical, like, I think it felt like the author was trying to be edgy, and he was sarcastic and close-minded. But then at one point, and I don't remember what point it was, but he said something about maybe he was being close-minded. Like, okay, you're gonna get better. That's good. But no, I enjoyed the book. It wasn't the most well-written book that I read this month, but I would say it was not bad. Although you do have to get past the beginning. Oh, and one of the things I hated more about this character, aside from him being all close-minded and sarcastic all the time, was how he viewed the main girl, at least for several chapters. He just was constantly objectifying her and looking at her lips and looking at her hips and looking at her legs, and oh god, I hated this character. But he got better towards the end, I would say, although I probably won't read this one again. Next, I read A Maze of Death by Philip K. Dick, and let me tell you guys, I love this book, and I'm going to be borrowing more by him later on. 200 pages, and it went by in what felt like 2 hours. I don't remember how long it took me to read, but I really enjoyed it. I might have had to read slower in some parts than others. I read it so fast, and it was enjoyable, and I was very impressed by this. I'm definitely going to be reading more of his stuff. this was kind of dipping my toe into the puddle of this author. And there have been TV shows and movies based off of some of his stories. So next, I read Across the Universe by Beth Revis. I had read a sample of this a while back on my Kindle, and I went and got it at the library, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. As you can see, I've tabbed this book up. This is my first try at using tabs. The only problem is that it uses a lot. The good thing is this is a library book. I'm going to have to pull these out, so I might be able to reuse them, but we'll see. But once I started putting two and two together, I started using the orange here, and you can see I started postulating theories like right around halfway through the book. And to me, like, that feels good. I like being able to guess at what the deal is, and then when the final reveal comes, sometimes it comes a lot later than I feel like it should when I do that. But sometimes it's nice to see whether your theories are correct or not. Because if your theories are correct, that's kind of, you know, fulfilling in that, I guessed it. And this one in Defy the Stars I read over like a couple days because they were very easy and exciting and fun. Next, I started but could not quite finish right away The Alienist by Caleb Carr. This is a much denser book than it looks. It's 480 some pages. Yeah, 87 pages. 487 pages. I had to read it slowly because I didn't want to miss anything just sentence by sentence because I felt like I would miss something. That is how dense it was. Whether it was important for me to pay attention to every single detail of this book, not necessarily, but it did help me follow it a little bit better. It is a very intense and intricate psychological mystery, and I thought it was very inventive. It was a really cool idea for the author to choose a time period in which forensic evidence was not even admissible in court yet, and stuff like fingerprinting and profiling was new and kind of laughed at. And I thought that was really exciting because it felt like you're watching history being made, even though this is a completely fictional account. It is highly disturbing due to some of the content, but it was exciting. And I really did enjoy this book. And then lastly, I read Defy the Stars by Claudia Gray. And I either ran out of tabs or lost them partway through, but the way that I was marking this one had to do more with conception, and those did change pretty quickly halfway through the book anyway, so I wouldn't really have needed to mark up the book, although I did postulate some theories that I wasn't able to mark up, but that was about halfway through too. And I don't think the main thing hit me till like 2/3 of the way through. I had like a third left, and I was like, oh crap, I think I know what's going on here. I would definitely recommend this book. I recommend most of these books. I do not recommend The Cemetery Boys, but I don't unrecommend it either. So all of these are due at the library, so I will be returning them. I also intend to borrow some books. As I mentioned in my last video, I was torturing myself by reading samples, and I looked up some of those samples on our library's catalog, and they actually have several of them. Some of them aren't available right now, but 2 of them are. So I'm going to go, actually I think 3 of them are, because I looked up some more today. So I'm going to go to the library this afternoon, drop all these books off, and then I will be picking up more. If all works out well, I will be back here to show you my haul. It will be later in the day. Anyway, I only renewed these once. I'm very pleased with myself for having read all of them. I think it's because some of the books that I chose to read this month were a lot easier than others. As I said, a couple of them, actually, I think all the young adult ones I read within 24 hours, and then the one by Philip Dick I also read very fast, but it was also a shorter book. Lulu is not too happy with this situation. Got all of them in here. Look at this. Hey, dog. Oh my. Hello. Okay, so I am here with the books that I just got from the library. Now, 2 of these were not on my list to get, but I just couldn't help it. I got Dr. Futurosity by Philip K. Dick. Futurity. Dr. Futurity by Philip K. Dick. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing the title correctly, but that's okay. And this one I couldn't help because I wanted to borrow another one of his books. Also because last time I wanted to borrow multiple ones, I decided not to, so I grabbed one of the ones that I was interested in. Also, this one was completely unplanned, but I picked up The Importance of Being Earnest and Other Plays by Oscar Wilde, and I borrowed this because I was looking to see if they had the 1950s Importance of Being Earnest at the library. They did not, but they did have a book of plays, so I'm going to read these. It has commentary and everything about each of the plays, so I'm very interested in that. I really like The Importance of Being Earnest. It's very clever. I also picked up Magic Bitter, Magic Sweet by Charlie N. Holmberg. Yes. This is one of the books that I read the sample of, and this is the one that I think I wanted to read the most after finishing the sample. I also borrowed The Sudden Appearance of Hope by Claire North, and while I was looking in the stacks, I also saw that there are some other books by her that I think I would like to read, but that's for another time. But this is another one that I read a sample of, and actually the next one and last one I also read a sample of much further back, and I went through my Kindle and looked for all the samples and checked the catalog system. And this is the one. It's been a while since I read the sample, but the library actually had it available today. And that is The Word is Murder by Anthony Horowitz. And this one, he also has some books that I think would be interesting to read, but that will be for another time. This is supposed to be, yeah, okay. So the main character in this book is actually supposed to be the author. That's something that is appealing because it's just different and interesting. And he does reference Sherlock Holmes at the very beginning, so it's kind of like he's Watson, which is kind of cool. And it's about a woman who arranges her funeral before her death. I do distantly remember reading the sample and finding it interesting. So I've got that, Sudden Appearance of Hope, and Magic Bitter, Magic Sweet to take care of some of my sample readings. There are like 3 other books that aren't available currently that I will either pick up next month or hold off until April. It all depends on how much reading I've gotten done. So those are the books. Another 5, and then I'm also going to be reading the books that my husband gave me, which is Walden by Henry David Thoreau and Becoming by Michelle Obama. I already cracked open Becoming today, so yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. My Twitter and Instagram links are in the description below if you want to follow me on those, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.